Hello everyone, this is Vince from Pastor Life. Want to share with you some lessons that I have learned from the churches that I've pastored. Over the past 40 some years, I have pastored 7 churches, and I have learned lessons from each and every one of them that I believe would be helpful to you in your ministry. Now, if you'd like to know what I've done in the past video, just check the description box below and it will have a link to that last video. Today, I want to talk about the second church I pastored while I was in seminary at Wake Forest. It was a church that ran about 30. It was about an hour away from Wake Forest, east of Rocky Mountain, a small little community, and we were there for about 2 years. Now, I learned a great deal about pastoring, a great deal about people, and I want to share that with you today. The first thing that I learned, being from the mountains of western North Carolina, was that there was a culture difference in the eastern part of the state. So I want to remind you, even if you move just a few counties away, there might be a culture that's exclusive to that area. And where I was at, they had a very exclusive culture than what we would have in the mountains. Now, it was an older congregation, but they were so kind to us, and most of the time on Sundays, they would invite us to their homes to eat Sunday meal. One particular house that we went to was a very elegant house. They were an elderly couple, so kind to us, and they had this wonderful meal spread out for my wife, my baby son, and for themselves. And at the end of the meal, the wife asked me if I would like a piece of pecan pie. Well, where I'm from, it would be an insult to refuse a dessert. So no matter what it would have been, I would have said, yes, thank you, and I would have eaten it. But this pecan pie was out of this world. So when I said yes, she brought me a piece of pecan pie. We were all talking, having a good time. A few minutes passed, and she looked at me dead in the eye and said, "Pastor, would you like a piece of pecan pie?" I thought to myself, well, I thought I'd just eat a piece of pecan pie. Maybe in the excitement, she'd forgot to bring it out or forgot that she mentioned it. And I said, well, sure, I would like a piece of pecan pie. So she gets up from the table, goes into the kitchen, comes back in with a piece of pecan pie. I eat that second piece. We're talking, having a good time, and she looks at me again and she says, "Pastor, would you like a piece of pecan pie?" Well, again, if I said no, I would have been a refusal is not the act of a friend. So I said, "Yes, ma'am, I would like a piece of pecan pie." So she gets up and leaves and comes back. Now, this is my third piece of pecan pie that I'm eating. And I'm thinking maybe she's forgotten, maybe she's having memory issues, but I'm getting full. I've had a full meal, and now I've eaten half of a pecan pie. So I finished the third piece of pecan pie. And a few minutes passes, and she says, "Pastor, would you like a piece of pecan pie?" And I called her by her name. First name is Becky. I said, "Becky, I've already eaten 3 pieces of pecan pie. Why do you keep asking me if I want a piece?" And she said, "Well, from our culture, if we say, 'Would you like another piece of pie?' that's kind of an insult to you, like you've already had too much." I said, "Well, where I'm from, if we refuse, then we're insulting the host." And she said, "I'm glad we've got that figured out because I was running out of pecan pie and all I had left was some banana popsicles." So lesson learned, folks. If you're going to a different area, be aware that they have culture that might be different than your culture. And it's a whole lot easier to learn their culture than for you'd expect them to learn your culture. So that was the first big lesson I learned, is that cultures are different, really sometimes from church to church. The second thing I learned, remember this was just my second church, and we went to this small church, and they were missing something, not just a pastor, they were missing indoor plumbing. It had been an older church, and they just never saw the need to install indoor plumbing. And here I was, a young pastor, seminary pastor, young wife. I had a young child that was just a few months old. So I met with the deacons, again, just a handful of deacons, and I brought it up that they didn't have any indoor plumbing. Had they ever thought about it? And they laughed and they said, "No, Pastor, this is the way we were brought up in this church. It's good enough for our children, and it'll be good enough for yours." Again, it's one of these divine moments that come upon you from time to time. And I asked them, do you have indoor plumbing in your houses? And they said, "Oh, yes, we have 2 bathrooms, 2 bedrooms, whatever." And I said, "Well, did you always have it?" And they said, "No, there was a time when we did not have indoor running water." And I said, "What makes your house better than God's house? And they thought about it and they said nothing. So what we were able to do is we were able to have change with cooperation. Now, had I stood up in the pulpit and berated them and said that you're behind the times, you need this and you need that, I probably would have met some resistance. But one of the best things I did was I sat down with the leaders of the church, asked them why this was the way that it was, and then kind of talked to them. And in a matter of minutes, we had people that had raised money, volunteered to dig a well. Some had volunteered to build the well house. Others had volunteered to run the line and then make a room that would accommodate an indoor restroom and even a water fountain, just a short period of time. I believe the key to that was that I was able to cooperate with them, and it was change. Change is never easy, but we were able to cooperate and work together. So in your churches, when you're dealing with your leadership, if you see something that you feel needs to be addressed, sit down with your leaders, talk to them, cooperate with them, work with them, realize that you're on the same team and you are their shepherd. You're there to help them and work with them. The third thing that I learned, even though we were only there for a short while, when we graduated, we moved on to a full-time church, and that was the conclusion. We had to say goodbye. And some churches, it is harder to leave than others, but this church was particularly hard as far as leaving. They had been so kind to us and so loving to us. They would have poundings, and if you don't know what a pounding is, that's what they would do for the pastor at certain times of the year. Maybe when you first arrived on the field, they would give a pounding, which was food and just items that you would need for your household. And they would do that for us. They did it for us at Christmas. I think when my son was born, they did it, and when we left. And we had to learn to say goodbye in a good way. Now, sometimes that's not always the case. If you've pastored churches, maybe you had to leave under unsavory, bad circumstances. But always try to leave with class. No matter what's happened, how they've treated you, there's always going to be a conclusion. Even in good churches, there is a conclusion. I retired from my church or resigned, whatever, after 22 years. It was sad, but there needs to be a conclusion to everything. So with those three things helped me out a lot in my ministry. I learned that cultures are different, and my culture was no better or worse than anybody else's, but I needed to respect the people's culture where I pastored. I learned that you could have change in a church, and the best way to have change is to cooperate with the leaders and to sit down and to talk and to make sure that everybody is on the same page. And I learned the difficulty of even having to say goodbye, because I remember pulling out of that driveway for the last time. And some of those members told us, these older members, that we love you and this will probably be the last time we'll see you on this side of glory. Now, we were pulling off. We were young. We had our whole future ahead of us. Now, 35 years later, it's kind of reversed. Now you're the older guy. And I hope I have years to go, but I realize what it's like when you see somebody young moving on and you're saying, God bless you, we love you, may not see you again on this side of glory, but we'll see you when we see Jesus. One of the saddest conclusions, but at the same time, one of the greatest conclusions is when we see Jesus face to face. Now, that's it for today. I hope that you like this. If you haven't, I hope that you subscribe, that you're able to share with your friends. If they would benefit them, that you'd be able to let them know about this site, and just continue to pray for us. God bless you and have a great day.